Hello, geometry students. This is Mr. Fugay, and we are going to talk about some vocabulary involving circles. Prior to this video, hopefully you've had a chance to watch the Math Antics video about circles, which gives a brief overview of what they are. Most of it you might know, and it also talks a little bit about pi. This video, we're not going to discuss the constant pi. We're going to talk more about specific segments, angles, arcs, and other terms associated with the circle. So we're going to go through and just kind of draw the description based on each of these definitions, and then you'll be asked to look to identify some of these in various diagrams. So here we go. So the definition of a circle is a set of all points that are the same distance from a given point called the center. And as was pointed out in the Math Antics video, if you have a fixed point here called the center, let's say we want to go 1 unit to the right, 1 unit to the left, 1 unit up, 1 unit down, 1 unit diagonally. And then you keep going, and as you begin to put all these points that are exactly 1 unit away, you start to create a circle. So that is how a circle is created. Now, once the circle is created, there are some unique segments and markings that we can do with it. The first of which was also mentioned in the video, and that is the radius. That is the distance from the center to some point on the circle. It does not matter what direction you go. So there would be an example right there of what a radius would look like. It goes from the center to the end in whatever direction it needs to. Second is a chord. The chord is also going to be a segment, but in this case, both endpoints are going to be on the circle. So if I put a point here and I put a point here and I want to connect them, that is a chord. If I want to put a point here and a point there and connect them, that is also a chord. And we can draw an infinite number of these if we wanted to. Now, there is a very specific type of chord we're going to talk about next. And that is if you have, well, first off, the term is diameter, and this definition is a distance across the circle through the center. But another way of looking at it is it is a chord, but it has to pass through the center. So here's my center. So if I were to put a point here and then look away across and put a point here and connect them, that by definition is a chord, but because it also went through the center here as it did, that's what makes it a diameter and not necessarily a chord. So a diameter is a specific type of chord. Okay, so those are some of the important segments. Let's start and talk about angles and arcs next. So first off, we're going to have an entire lesson devoted to this next term. Central angle is an angle whose vertex is at the center of the circle. So we'll have our center again. An angle, remember, is formed by two rays or segments that connect at a common point. So for example, that would be a central angle. This angle right here, I'll use the letter theta since we don't know what angle that is at the time. That angle right there would be considered a central angle. Now, once you start creating angles, you start really cutting the circle into different parts. And so for the next term, we talk about what's called a minor arc. Now, a minor arc is going to also be created as a part of a circle. So as a quick side definition, let's just make note here. An arc is part of the, we'll say, circumference or the outside of the circle. So circumference. So it's part of the circumference of our circle. So specifically, a minor arc is going to have a measure that is less than 180 degrees. So what that means is, let's say I drew a central angle that looked like this. The arc that we would be referring to in this situation that's less than 180 is the one that I'm highlighting here in yellow. That is going to be considered a minor arc. Versus what happens when we talk about the opposite. What is a major arc? Well, let me draw that same angle here for you. And when I'm referring to the major arc, I'm referring to the arc or the part of the circle that's more than 180. Basically, the part that is going around the entire outside of the circle like this. So what happens in the middle? Well, we have a minor arc is going to be less than 180. A major arc is greater than 180. What happens when it's exactly 180? Well, that's what we now create what's called a semicircle, and you're probably familiar with this. So if I actually draw myself a diameter that goes through the center like that, a semicircle is going to be exactly half of the circle. So that yellow half is going to be 180, and this blue half is going to be 180. So half a circle is 180. And then if the arc is less than half, it's a minor arc. And if it's greater, it's a major arc. All right, we just have a couple more definitions, 2 more to be particular. So we've talked about segments in circles. We've now talked about angles and arcs inside of circles. Finally, we're going to talk about 2 special types of lines. The first of which is called a tangent line. And yes, we did just talk about tangent ratios of trigonometry. There is a connection between them, but that is not something we're going to explore in this video. A tangent line is a line that intersects a circle at exactly 1 point. So what does that look like? Well, it means the line is going to graze the circle. It's essentially going to just hit the edge of it just like that. It does not go through it. It sort of just grazes the outside of it. That will be considered a tangent line. And then that special point, the point of which that they actually intersect the circle right there, that's going to be considered my point of tangency. And so again, what that essentially means is that that is the point of the tangent line that actually does touch the circle. Okay, one more definition, and I'll just going to go with, we'll just use black for this one since I don't have a brown marker. Secant line is a line specifically that intersects a circle in 2 points. Now, if I change the word line to segment, we would end up creating a chord. So the only difference between a chord and a secant line is that one's a line and one's a segment. That is literally the only difference. So if I just draw something that goes through the circle like this, yes, it intersects the circle twice. That, though, is a line which goes on forever, makes it a secant line. And oh yes, secant ratio in trigonometry, once again, there's something going on there in terms of relationship, but we're not going to make that connection here today. So that concludes our important segments, angles, arcs, and lines that are associated with a circle. You're going to now take the opportunity here, after watching this, to go ahead and look at a diagram like this and see if you can identify where these special points, lines, segments, and angles are all located, and you'll do the same here on the bottom example. That'll conclude the video. Thank you for watching and hope you have a good rest of your day.